Alright, so the Portland Trail Blazers organization has been very known for picking horrendously in the NBA draft, most notably in the NBA lottery, and it's been shown, especially in the last couple of seasons, and in many previous drafts, we've seen the Portland Trail Blazers pick absolutely horribly, and we're going to be going over those picks in this video. For those that don't know me, my name is pullupJ, bringing you some new NBA content. If you guys want to hit the subscribe button, feel free to. You guys don't have to, but we're going to get right into the 1972 NBA draft, where Portland is in its third season as a franchise and horrendously playing bad for the last couple of seasons. We then come to a point where the Portland Trail Blazers get the first overall pick. So they drafted LaRue Martin going number 1 out of Loyola. And the thing that is most notable about this is the pick that happened right afterward, which was Bob McAdoo, who was a Hall of Famer for the Buffalo Braves. And what makes it even worse is for this number 1 pick, he only lasted 4 seasons. But that's not even the worst part. He quit being an NBA player to take a job up at UPS to be a delivery driver. I kid you not. He literally just walked away from what could have been an NBA career. He literally came out of college having a really good career over at Loyola, and then coming into the NBA as the number 1 draft pick. You would think that everything would be going in your favor, but sadly not. It's just one of those things where you see players like of this caliber that feel like they can build something and then they just never panned out to be anything in the league. But for most of us that know, this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Portland drafting absolutely poorly, which is where we come 4 years later in the 1976 NBA draft, where Portland comes in with the number 5th pick and they draft Wally Walker. Now, this guy coming out of college was not that bad. He played all 4 years at Virginia, and he was pretty great all the way across the board, but generally, he just wasn't like the turning point player that Portland desperately needed, especially being a franchise for only 7 years up to this point. But once again, ironically enough, the pick right after Wally Walker was Adrian Dantley, scoring champion and a Hall of Famer. So this also blows my mind because you see Bob McAdoo 4 years prior become a Hall of Famer and get all these scoring titles and blah, blah, blah. And then you have Adrian Dantley just come out of nowhere, who out of college was also a star. There's a reason why he's up pretty high on the all-time scoring list. Like, for those that don't know his name, like, he's pretty legit. But not only that, you also have Robert Parrish, who got drafted 2 picks below him as well. So that makes it even worse. It's like you literally passed on 2 of the greatest scorers this game had to offer, and like you're literally missing out on that. It's absolutely ridiculous. But these drafts do not hold anywhere close to the comparison as the 1984 NBA draft, which housed some of the greatest names in NBA history, such as Hakeem Olajuwon, who went number 1, by the way, as well as Charles Barkley and John Stockton. In this draft, Portland had the number 2 overall pick. And you would think, since Hakeem Olajuwon was consensus number 1, you would think that you had every right reason to draft Michael Jordan. You would think like it would be the most obvious opportunity to either get him or Charles Barkley. Very, very great turning point for your franchise. It would have absolutely set yourselves over the map. What could go wrong, right? Like, you literally have nothing that's going wrong right now, and yet you decide to take Sam Bowie. Even though Sam Bowie played relatively great over Kentucky, it didn't even translate to the NBA like it did for Michael Jordan, because not only was the dude an NCAA champion, he won 6 rings. Like, that guy literally did everything that you possibly wanted for a franchise. Like, he pretty much had everything going for him. But honestly, though, Portland at this point was just taking a risk, was just trying to get size over talent. The reality is Sam Bowie was a 7'1" center, and honestly, at the time of 1984, it was pretty hard to come across a guy that was over 7 foot in the NBA draft. So even coming to the point of being like, okay, we're going to take a risk on this kid who played relatively good at Kentucky, it just didn't work in their favor, and it cost them big time, which is unfortunate. And then you have Portland coming into some pretty great seasons for a while. Eventually, Clyde Drexler does move on to go to the Houston Rockets to eventually win an NBA championship. As well as that, you do have the Jailblazers era starting in the late 90s to early 2000s, where you do get Scottie Pippen coming over, which is kind of cool. And then you obviously draft Zebo in 2001. You do have some good stuff coming eventually. And then we meet the 2007 NBA draft, where we meet one of the greatest what-ifs in NBA history in Greg Oden going number 1. And this was sad too, because we honestly thought that he was going to be a generational talent. But injuries just held this guy back, and it's so sad. But even then, I don't even know if his career, even if he was healthy, I don't know if he was going to hold up to the status of what would be Kevin Durant now. That's the one what if that I'm really not too sure about when looking forward, but then again, what are we going to do? But think about it, in the draft prior, you got LaMarcus Aldridge and Brandon Roy, you traded up for him, which was an absolute steal, and then in this draft, you got Greg Oden, which everyone saw at the time would be a potential big three in this league to come. Like, I will at least say, at least with Sam Bowie, he did last a decade in the league, but Greg Oden, he just could not hold his own on the court. Like, bro was injury prone to the death, and he only played a handful of games, which really was a shame, but once again, what can you do? Fortunately, though, of this modern era, that pretty much was as bad as it got because, once again, we didn't know what Greg Oden could have panned out to be if he was healthy. And fortunately, since then, we've drafted relatively good. But I did look over this a little bit, and I did gloss over a little bit more research, and I did find the 2011 NBA draft. So Portland had the 21st overall pick, and in this draft, we had the opportunity of drafting a point guard, considering Brandon Roy had announced his retirement, which was due to a slew of knee problems. So the goal here was just to get a point guard for the future, and we drafted Nolan Smith, who was an NCAA champion, so he did have promise coming out of college, and honestly, he probably did have the best resume coming out in comparison to a lot of these other college players. But still, even when you look down the draft board, like, Nolan Smith only played 2 years in the league, but fortunately what happened was we did get Damian Lillard the draft later, so it did turn out to be a happy ending. But still, the pick later was literally Kenneth Faried, who did turn out to have a relatively great career, and as well that you had Jimmy Butler going 30th, which, I mean, granted, no one thought that he would have been great like that going out of Marquette, but he did. And even then, at the bare minimum, you can get a guy like Corey Joseph or even a Reggie Jackson to run your point guard, even for a little bit. Like, that wouldn't have been too bad. But yeah, at least Portland is relatively playing great right now, kind of. I mean, we have Scoot Henderson. I mean, we drafted pretty great this year. I mean, I'm at least happy about that, but what do you guys think about these draft picks now? I mean, we honestly see that a lot of them didn't pan out to be the greatest, but fortunately, we got a pretty good building roster, so we can't necessarily complain, but there's still a lot to think about here. Once again, if you guys are just scrolling by, make sure you guys drop a sub if you guys want to watch some more content in the future. I'm going to be uploading a lot, so stay tuned, and I'll see y'all next time.